Hi, you're listening to It Happened to Me, a rare disease and medical challenges podcast. The mission of our podcast is to support you, our listeners, and to create community as you confront the toughest challenges in life. All of us will experience health hardships. The real question is how we adapt. That's the focus of It Happened to Me, which wants to help you overcome limitations and live a full and satisfying life. Drawing on their own health challenges, co-hosts Cathy Gildenhorn and Beth Glassman interview guests who share stories and research to help you succeed in the face of difficult health obstacles. It happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.
40 years, our guest believed she was just a bit quirky, maybe a little clumsy, definitely bad with directions, and notoriously terrible with faces. But a single jarring moment in a grocery store changed everything. It led her on a deep dive into the world's leading neuroscience labs, where she discovered that her brain wasn't just quirky, it was wired in a fundamentally different way.
Joining us today is Sadie Dingfelder. Sadie is a freelance science journalist whose work has graced the pages of the Washington Post, the New Yorker, and the National Geographic. She is also the author of the fascinating new book called Do I Know You? A Faceblind reporter's journey into the science of sight, memory, and imagination. Welcome to the program, Sadie.
Thank you for having me.
We're delighted to have you here. Thank you, Sadie. Now, let's start at the beginning. You've described a grocery store epiphany involving a jar of peanut butter and a man you thought was your husband. Can you walk us through that moment and how it shifted your perspective from I'm quirky to something is actually different here?
Yeah, so I was grocery shopping with my then boyfriend, Steve, who later becomes my husband. But I was grocery shopping with Steve, and he is just like a real gourmet kind of person, a great cook. And he just would never buy, he's always buying the most basic version of a thing, right?
Okay.
I never saw him really buy peanut butter at all. And then all of a sudden I look at him and he's buying generic peanut butter. And so, yeah. And I'm like, what? Yeah, it's one of those things you wouldn't I've noticed unless you've been with someone for a while. But I grabbed it out of the cart and I was brandished it like it was exhibit A in a murder trial. And I was like, since when do you buy generic? And he looked at me and he was terrified. And this is like a large man, like 6'4". And so I was like, oh my God. I looked behind me to see what was so scary. And then I realized that actually he was scared of me because it was not Steve. It was just a Steve-shaped stranger. I dropped the peanut butter jar and I ran off. I imagine that he thinks just like grocery store marketing research has gotten weirdly aggressive or something. I ran off and found my actual husband / boyfriend. And I said, can you believe this happened? And Steve was like, no, yeah, definitely. This stuff happens to you all the time.
Oh.
And I was like, you're right. It does. And the thing is, my lifelong, because I was about 39, my lifelong explanation for a lifetime of funny things that I sort of considered funny stories was just that I was story prone. That was my explanation. I'm like, weird things happen to me. I don't know why. And that was the end of it. And so for the first time, though, I really thought, you know what? This is not the kind of mistake normal people make or other people make, right? And so I was supposed to be writing the story on John Waters' new art exhibit, but instead I just started researching brain disorders and vision and quickly came across this concept of prosopagnosia or face blindness, which is, and it's a weird disorder because it's a processing. So your vision can be perfectly fine. You can see every face perfectly clearly. The problem is that your brain is inefficiently, it's not making this very rich and detailed 3D model of a face that normal people's brains can make almost effortlessly.
Now, many people say they are bad with names, but you've noted that face blindness is much deeper. How do you explain the difference between a social lapse and the neurological reality of being unable to recognize a face?
It's like, yeah, people always say like, "Oh, I'm terrible with names too." And whenever I get that response, and I appreciate the attempted commiseration, but I'm like I have failed to recognize my mom. Like,
Mhm. Yeah. Mhm.
and that's the one that people usually seem to understand is like okay,
That's strange.
yeah, so it's
Yeah.
not so it's a whole like if you know someone for sure, but you just can't remember where from or their name, you're ahead of me by several steps.
How do you recognize your husband? Does he help you? Does he prompt you? Does he announce himself? How does it work?
Well, it's such a quirky disorder because so without realizing it, I and basically every other face blind person developed a whole suite of skills that allows us to figure things out and with voices, with clothes, with people's body movements. And honestly, people will say they know what their technique is, but really we really don't know. It's almost unconscious. And so sometimes I recognize people that I shouldn't be able to recognize. Like at one of my flip talks, there was a guy in the back who I had gone on like 2 dates with. And I was like, why? Here like a decade ago. And I was like, oh my God, Corey. And it was like, I feel like such a fraud. So it's a quirky thing. The thing that everyone has in common, weirdly, and the thing that really sort of starts to alert people to the fact that they might be not seeing faces normally is that we can't follow television shows very well. Yeah, we're trying to watch a television show and like someone puts on a hat and we're like, who's that? That's the thing that people start to notice that they're not catching on because in real life, there's a lot of other tricks.
Yeah.
Context is a big one. But in a television or movie, you're really depending, they depend on people having this near photographic memory for faces. And if you don't have that, that's when it really shows up.
So, Sadie, did you get to write that article?
Yeah, I wrote an article for the Washington Post. And again, like when I first pitched this story, I thought that I was just like a little below average. Like and I thought it was going to be one of these stories where it's like, is Sadie face blind? Oh no, she's just a little below average, but it's still an interesting story you just read, right? But no, I was like the worst of the worst.
Oh, wow.
And I cried. I'm at work. I'm in like a sound booth because they were going to use this for a podcast and they really should have because it's very dramatic. But they ended up not using that. But anyway, I get sort of the diagnosis and I'm like, holy moly, this makes me rethink my entire life,
In actuality, you've really been compensating very well. That you're so skilled. So I was going to ask you, so how do you do it? We all have social occasions, and I'm sure you have professional meetings that you have to go to, and you know what's going to happen. People are going to say hello, and you're not going to know who they are. And how do you handle that? So we're talking about the cues, and how do you prepare yourself to go into that meeting? Because it has to be somewhat anxiety provoking.
Yeah, there's a real before and after here. Like once I found out I was face blind, now I go in pretty like with more confidence because I'm like, I know myself. I'm not going to recognize almost anyone. And at a professional meeting, luckily there's often name tags. But and so I've gotten really like blasé about just being like, I have no idea who you are, but like, can you tell me I'm face blind?
I have to say, Sadie, I found because I had some similar issues during COVID, a number of my girlfriends let their hair go gray. Was really throwing me off. Gray hair. Or people, got drastic haircuts. People get a drastic haircut. That's going to
Yeah.
throw you off. And I've also found that people since COVID are wearing their glasses more, not less. So I knew them as a contact lens wearer, and now they're wearing their glasses. And I mean, do you find that people change their appearance on you? And that is really a difficult one.
In retrospect, realized that I lost a friendship because
Really?
It was like, okay, so when I was in middle school, I really didn't have many friends. And but I had one friend named Susan, and she kind of disappeared like the summer between middle school and high school. And, back in the day, like you couldn't hunt someone down on Facebook or whatever, right?
Right.
I was just like, yeah, sometimes people disappear. And then like when I found all this out, I found out she like emailed me and I figured out that basically she'd gotten bangs and I treated her like a total stranger. And
And she didn't get why.
yeah, and she took it really personally.
Uh, You know what I do? It's similar to what you were saying about face blind, but I just announce to people when I come in that I have a visual disability, and it's very hard for me to see faces right in bright light or in certain conditions. And just please announce yourself. And I have everybody announce themselves to me, and
That's a great plan and good strategy, Cathy, for people that have face blindness or any kind of visual disability. That is a great plan.
and it's working. Most
Uh-huh.
people remember to do it.
Yep.
And if they don't, I'm at a loss until they give me an opening and I can say, I have such a visual disability. Can I need help here. It's so hard for me to see a face, and they'll announce themselves.
Also, I have the same thing in my family. Everyone knows. So people will come up, hi, Aunt Beth, it's so and so. Or even the young ones, they know to announce themselves. And that is
That's
a big help
beautiful.
and a comfort, because that goes to the anxiety, because you don't want to miss out on social events. You don't want to, certainly, Sadie, you have a profession you need to stay tied to. You need to talk to your fellow reporters and be part of that networking. And so helping you deal with these situations is important.
When you have an interview for a story, does it ever last more than one day? And do you ever have trouble with the particular interviewee in recognizing them? You'll know where to pick up, content wise, but do you have trouble processing that they're here again?
I mean, I wrote one story I wrote about like a zookeeper, and I hung out with him for a few days. And luckily, I mean, he was the only other human being around, really. So
You could, by process of elimination, this is it.
if someone wanted to play a mean prank on me, they could have substituted any sort of slight, like soft-spoken man. Like, really.
Unbelievable.
Sadie, you have another condition, and this has to do with memories. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, SDAM. It sounds like a terrible affliction, right? It stands for severely deficient autobiographical memory, but it's actually not a real diagnosis. It's just a description of people. Yeah, it's just a description of people who inhabit the far extreme end. I mean, a lot of people with it feel like it's a disorder, but we inhabit an extreme end of the sort of mnemonic spectrum. So on the other side of the spectrum are people with HSAM, or highly superior autobiographical memory. And they are the people who, can remember what they had for breakfast. Like you can give them a day of the week and they can say what they had for breakfast. Or it's wild. And then people like me. So it turns out that there's like actually two fairly distinct types of memory that you use to sort of record your life. And one of them is episodic and the other one's called semantic. And so the episodic memories are the ones that you can mentally time travel to and sort of relive. You can re-see, re-smell, it's the classic.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Like I didn't really believe in these things. Like I thought it was just people being poetic, because my version of that is just stories I've told myself. Like I don't have that episodic experience. And so people like me so most people sort of split the difference and have sort of a balance of episodic and semantic memory and mix them kind of together when they're remembering their lives.
Semantic memory, though, is just words and storytelling about the memories.
Yeah, so it's semantic memory is just like kind of words and facts. The episodic memory is actually re-triggering the sensations, the visual world, any other sensory modalities. Yeah. So for me, it's my entire life is kind of like not any more vivid than if I read a biography of myself.
So you don't remember your first bike or your first car or when you got braces or, any of these episodes in your life.
No, I have no episode.
Can you remember if someone tells you a story about it? Can you remember the semantic side of it?
Absolutely. And, and I
Okay.
tell myself, I think that we are disproportionately storytellers, the people on with SDAM, because that's our only way to remember things. And so when I go to write a story, like as a reporter, I already have it down in words in my head. I don't have to translate it from images into words. It's always just in words.
Helps you being a reporter.
I think that it definitely has an advantage for writers of all kinds because pictures are not even there really.
Right.
The kinds of information that you can store well in words, are things like themes and but like the sensory details are what we lose. And we also lose a lot of the emotion. And so like there's pros and cons there. In terms of like sort of thinking abstractly and big picture kind of vision, I think that there's definitely an advantage with
That's unbelievable.
I'm sitting here thinking, I remember when I fell off my bike.
wow.
Like with that, and I actually still have my knee I think I had sand or something underneath the knee. I mean, you can still see.
Wow.
But I remember purposely seeing how low I could get. We lived on a cul-de-sac, how
Mhm.
low I could get the bike to the ground. I was cruising for a bruise and I was really chancing it. And eventually the bike slid out from me. I remember. So this is the kind of thing that you're saying unless someone told you about it,
A story you wouldn't remember.
you wouldn't remember that sort of episode or your first car accident or your first, I'm just thinking all the different things.
Well, what's
happened to
interesting
us.
is like if you go back and replay that experience in your mind, I don't know if you can do it on demand or not, but if
Yes.
you did, like, you would like, could you tell me what the weather was like or what day of the week it was, baby, or what happened immediately before or after? Things that like are those sort of like,
Things you don't have. But I've got to say, on so many levels, as I go back through my childhood and remember things like Beth, it's hard for me sometimes to tell the difference between a memory that's based on what I was told versus what I remember. It's just so interesting. I've never thought about it quite that in depth. What type of memory do I have?
yeah. And, again, like most people's memories are probably a mix. And as we get older, your brain tilts towards semantic because you sort of consolidate your past as stories and
Sure.
things are not as big a deal. Like, because what makes your brain make an episodic memory is a big emotion, right? And so you don't have as many like huge emotions as like an older adult than you did when you were like 13.
Yeah.
So it's normal. Most people eventually end up kind of on my side of the spectrum.
Wow. Well, I want to go back to this reporter concept because you worked as a reporter for years. And that's a job that relies heavily on identifying people and recalling events.
Yeah.
And recalling events in particular, because I like the story about the zoo conservator when there was only like one person there. That's a good one. But how do you recall events? Is it all semantic? What are some of the hacks or strategies that you've used to navigate a career in journalism before you knew, especially before you knew you had these conditions?
Well, so I knew instinctively that people like sensory details in stories. Like I know that's a thing people want. I don't even really care that much about it. But so when I would go out on reporting errands and I had some instinct that I was like not good at remembering that stuff. So I always write on the top of every notebook. I write sensory details. Like that's just a habit I got into at some point. And so
Makes perfect sense.
yeah, yeah. So then when I'm out reporting, I think, oh, okay, like the crane's feathers are like storm cloud gray or that kind of thing. And I write it down immediately.
Right.
And then, of course, in more recent years, I have really, use technology to my advantage, and I take videos. I take a lot of videos, pictures, and like audio recordings because when you're trying to reconjure up a scene, I can't do it in my head at all. So I have to like refer to external sources.
Well, you go, girl, because I give you so much credit for picking a career in journalism with your limitations. Even before you knew the scientific description, you knew you had trouble with all of these issues. And still, you went for journalism, which really lives on these issues and really demands these issues. I just think it's so cool. And I'm so glad you wrote a book because the real story is not always what you generated on the individual story, but it's the whole story behind your ability to create stories
Yeah.
in general.
It was so eye-opening to learn all these things about myself because I think that it's weird, but being faceblind has been a huge advantage for me as a journalist in a weird way. Specifically, it's just like I have a lifetime of experience talking to strangers because everyone looks like a stranger. And figuring out using being tricky and getting people to say who they are and piecing things together. So it's actually been weirdly helpful. And I also think in terms of SDAM, it's easy. I think it's relatively easy. You can use a video camera to capture sensory details to some extent. But getting the big picture, figuring out what the themes are, that's the stuff I'm good at. And I think that's harder for computers anyway.
Pat yourself on the back because this is all remarkable.
That's great.
It is.
So you're
really,
a good detective. It's really
exactly
you're
good.
being a detective. Yeah.
Yeah, just like a lifelong detective without realizing everyone wasn't doing it. I thought we were all doing it.
You mentioned that you never learned to drive and often felt lonely as a child. Now, so looking back through the lens of your diagnoses, how did these quirks now make sense as symptoms of your neurodivergence?
Yeah, I really was lying to myself about driving for quite a while because if anyone asked, I would be like, well, I care about the environment. But when I really asked myself the real reason, it's because I was scared. And, driving it turns out that people who are stereoblind like me, so I can't see in 3D, I have no depth perception. And people like me, even if we don't realize it, are way less likely to learn to drive.
I was driving, but I have no depth perception, and I'm colorblind and everything else. I can't drive anymore.
Wow.
And I get it. I get it.
Yes.
But I don't know. What do you think? Is it harder to come to that reality as an adolescent versus as an adult?
Well, you have a special experience because you know what it's like to have depth perception and to not have it.
Right.
But I only have ever not had it. So I didn't really understand why everyone else had this like intuitive ability to like merge into traffic,
Mhm.
because when I see a car coming, like I really can't judge the distance like a normal person. So I'm hyper, what's the word? Careful, right? You have to be able to drive like several semi trucks through a space before I will attempt to put myself in it. So I did learn how to drive though. So I did a bunch of research and I found out basically it was said to me like, stereoblind people do not make good commercial drivers, but we are fine as regular drivers. We're quote, like no worse than anyone else.
Than anyone else.
Now, I was going to ask you, this is the first time you use that term, stereo blind. And maybe you could give a definition of that to our audience.
Yeah. So it's really interesting to me that most people do not know their stereo acuity because a lot of us know what our, visual acuity is. Like we know we're nearsighted, we know we need glasses, but there's a whole other dimension of vision, which is your ability to estimate how far away something is from you or some other object in space. And some people are so good at it. And those people are the ones who become like astronauts or surgeons, like people who have to do really difficult fine detailed things like that. And then, but okay, so most people have pretty good stereo vision, right? Like, and we have all humans have two eyes facing forward with a lot of overlap. And the whole reason for that redundancy is actually to see things that have been camouflaged in nature. So that's our hunt. Isn't that cool? Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah. And so actually in World War II, they would fly spy planes around and take two pictures in quick succession, and then give it to people with those, those little viewfinder kind of like toys where like you look at something with both and like it makes a 3D image.
Yes. Yes.
Anyway, and they use that so people could see things that they couldn't otherwise see, like a tank that's been covered in hay or something like that.
Yeah.
Isn't that so cool?
It's the idea that everything is flat.
Yeah, so I live in a very flat world where like everything's on the same plane of existence. So if you could beam into my brain, it would look like a painting or something.
Now, you have really learned about all these conditions because you were in lots of science lab studies. So talk about that. You subjected yourself to all these studies.
Yeah.
Why? Why did you do it?
It's so funny because like when I think back on like that moment when I was like, I don't think my brain is right. I think a neurotypical person might have gone to most people would have gone to a neurologist, right?
Right.
But I'm a science reporter, so I just immediately went to the literature, right? I immediately went to the science research, and and the fun thing about science research is that all the researchers' emails are usually like on their papers. So then I just started emailing people like saying like, I think I have the thing you study. Can I be in an experiment? Can you tell me if I actually have this thing?
Wow.
And I think that it's actually really helpful to know how to do that because science is often quite ahead of medicine.
I see.
And so if you can read science papers and reach out directly to scientists, you can probably learn a lot more about yourself and your.
Were they receptive to your inquiries?
Yeah. And what's funny? I thought, oh, maybe it's because I'm a reporter or maybe it's because like, whatever. But they really only wanted me for my brain. Like, I thought that I was like making friends with these scientists, but as soon as they were done with my brain, like I didn't hear from. It's okay. That's okay. That happens.
Yeah.
But it does. But if you have a weird enough brain, people will be like climbing over each other to get you into their fMRIs and their studies.
While you have deficits on some part of the brain, are you finding that you have real pluses and benefits on other sides?
I think if we think about something outside of compensations, yeah, I think big picture thinking is something that people with SDAM and aphantasia kind of have in common.
Well, speaking of aphantasia, a blind mind's eye, how does the inability to visualize imagery impact your creative process as a writer?
Well, again, like I didn't know that it was possible to do it, so I wasn't jealous of everyone else. And so, yeah, again, like I've always just depended on either pictures or my own notes to revisualize things or to try to describe things to readers but I didn't realize readers were visualizing, right? I didn't realize. And so it made no sense to me. Do you guys remember the intro for Reading Rainbow?
I'm trying to think.
Okay. Do you remember, the program?
Yes.
Yeah. It's like butterfly in the sky. I can fly twice as high. Anyway, in the cartoony intro, they have children who are like reading books and then all of a sudden they're immersed in like whatever the kingdom is that they're reading about, like a medieval fairy tale or whatever. And I remember thinking, oh, this program is trying to trick dumb kids into reading because by telling them that they'll be immersed in these worlds. And I'm like, obviously you don't get immersed. You just read.
But you do.
I know. I'm kind of jealous. And all of these long descriptive passages that I sometimes just skim make more sense. Now I understand what they're trying to do for people.
I think you have a wonderful big picture understanding of things because of who you are, I venture to say. It's because of the challenges you face that you have the benefits and gifts that you possess.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I would never redo my childhood without my disabilities because
Wow, that's a
I,
huge statement.
yeah, because I like who I am, you know? I, yeah. So I like where I ended up and I wouldn't want to like try to redo anything. But that said, like the middle school version of me today and that, those kids are out there. It's surprisingly common. It's 1 in 33 people are face blind.
I didn't know it was that prevalent.
Yeah, it's really common. And all of these kids out there are just faking it and not really realizing it. And some of them think that they're just unlikable or, can't make friends or other things like spacey or stupid. And so I made a little infographic for like elementary schools and I've been trying to spread the word of
Like, it's beautiful. But do it on social media because that's where they all are anyways.
It's true. It's true.
Now, in your book, I'm going to go to your book. You talk about the temptation to fake it with a smile and a vague conversation, which is in some ways what these young kids you're talking about are doing. How has being open about your disability changed the way you interact with people, like the ladies in that hiking group way back when?
Yeah, what's funny? I mean, as I've gotten older, I find myself faking it a lot less in a lot of ways, I think. I'm just really honest. It's actually really helped my relationship with my husband because I used to need to like project this veneer of perfection. Like, yeah, I thought of that. I did that. And now I'm just like, oops, I didn't do that. But in terms of like, yeah, it's kind of surprising in some ways because I don't think it's changed how people relate to me that much differently. Like I kind of was hoping for a bigger change, but as it is, people still walk up to me and expect me to know who they are. And and I am like, I'm sorry, I don't know. At least I give them advance warning that that is going to happen.
And keep doing that. That announcing what you need is such a great strategy.
I made a button for myself that I'm not always brave enough to wear. It says, I'm face blind.
It's yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like one of those hello tags sort of designs. And it's like, hello, I'm face blind. I am just pretending to know who you are.
My goodness.
Katie, keep a sense of humor.
You are such a delightful person that I can't imagine anyone who wouldn't want to be your friend. I am just having a ball just listening to you. So I mean, you're just as adorable as you can be. I mean, you're just fun, and it's really been a great session being with you. So you have discovered a myriad of conditions that you have.
Yeah.
So there are two sides to that coin: the discovery and then the realization. What do you think?
Discovery. Oh, yeah. Like it's almost like a photograph that takes a long time to develop, right? Because if you are an adult and you already have a fairly calcified sense of who you are, it's really hard to integrate in a whole new chunk of information that requires you to like revise your entire life story. Like I had a lot of explanations for myself that actually weren't true. Like, for instance, no guy has ever asked me out. I've never been asked out by anyone. And no, I asked him out. I'm always the asker. And so, but it turns out I've heard from at least, well, just two, but that's enough guys who like did hit it off with me. And then I treated like a total stranger.
Right.
And so
They were scared.
yeah, they were scared.
Were they amused?
Yeah. Like no,
Because
no one
they
was
thought maybe you
persistent.
weren't interested.
Right.
At a certain point, you need a button. Keep your sense of humor on Facebook because at a certain point, they have to be able to laugh it off because it's not. There's no intent in there. It's just a neurological way of being, of living.
Well, and I didn't know that about myself, and certainly random guys I was didn't know.
Yeah.
But what's funny is that I realize in retrospect, in deep retrospect, that all of my boyfriends and all of my best friends are highly visually distinctive. Like if you're a pretty average looking person, like it's really hard for me to make friends with you because I will just be stuck at the conversational level of like, how's the weather?
So do you have a lot of redheaded friends?
Red hair, blue hair, big personalities, tiny friends, huge friends. Like it's just, no one average. There's no really boring looking friend of mine.
Sadie, we always talk about on this program that everybody has something.
Here.
I know Cathy and I have our thing, you have found your thing, but we can all have wonderful lives. And just talking to you, I mean, you're joyous. You are absolutely, we're laughing away. We're having a ball talking to you. You're as fun as you can be.
Absolutely.
Having discovered that maybe your brain is a little bit different, but you're living with it and enjoying your life. Am I correct in that statement?
Totally. And and that was like kind of a weird thing about this whole discovery because I wasn't out like I didn't feel like I wasn't sick, I was fine. I was doing great in my life. And then all of a sudden get sort of all this extra information dumped on me. So and I was like, is this actually helpful? Like to know all this stuff about myself? Because I was coping just fine. And so like a question is I kind of haven't fully answered. It's like, like it's know thyself, like you're supposed to know thyself, but like is there an amount of information that maybe isn't helpful?
I don't know. I think that you're able to handle it. You seem to be able, it actually filled in the puzzle for you.
It really helped me.
You're so self-aware that it made you understand the complete picture.
And you know what it really helped with is my relationships with my friends because I didn't understand. Again, I think it's pretty normal. Most of us think that other people have the same basic perceptions and inner life like that we do, right?
I get that.
Yeah, and you see this in like famous philosophers and that people, Socrates said thinking is imagery, and then Aristotle said actually thinking is just words, and everyone just thinks that it's their thing is the norm. And so for me, so when you have SDAM, sometimes like you can get over setbacks like a lot faster than normal people because so like when I would break up with a boyfriend, like, and I had like some dramatic like stupid breakups, like I would be usually okay like running into that person within like 2 or 3 weeks. And so my very good friend Miriam, she will break up with someone and then just keep thinking about it for like the next year. And and at some level, I really thought that she was choosing to do that. But now that I understand that she has these episodic memories that haunt her, and she has this ability to visualize this guy in any outfit she wants, which kind of sounds fun. That's what powers the obsession. Whereas I literally just will hide photos of whoever I want to forget from myself, and I forget them fast.
Very efficient.
Yeah, that's very efficient.
Now, you experimented with vision therapy and video game therapy to try and gain 3D vision. What did those experiences teach you about the limits and the possibilities of the adult brain?
Yeah, you know what? Okay. I went into this book wanting to write this like amazing, exciting thing about like neuroplasticity. Like I want to be like, hey, I learned how to see in 3D. I learned how to recognize people. And I failed on everything. But I did I got pretty significant gains on the paper, like on tests, but it really didn't translate to real life a lot of the time. So, and the way it was sort of really explained to me is that if your brain has a hack that works, then you're not going to be able to learn like the correct way to do something unless there's like serious pressure on you to do so. And so in the case of vision, like the way they've been able to get sort of vision to become more plastic is by putting animals in total darkness for like a week. Yeah. And then when that somehow like unlocks a chemical gate that allows you to do some reprogramming. And of course, I email these researchers and I'm like, put me in a dark room. I'll do it. It's probably for the best. No one took me up on that. But yeah, if you don't, as an adult, it takes like a weird amount of pressure to really force you to do something. If you already have like a good enough hack, and if something's developmental, if you've been living with it your whole life and you don't even realize it, I mean, that's by definition something that you figured out how to work around.
You are a wealth, Sadie, of information and resourcefulness on living with a challenge, any kind of visual or brain challenge overall. I want to, in our show notes, be sure that you can provide us with any kind of links to your book, of course, and to any other resources or any other groups or support groups or scientific groups that you found particularly helpful in facing your challenges right on. Because no matter what the challenges are, Many times our audience is able to gain such insight from guests, no matter what their challenge. It's just a way of addressing.
Yeah, yeah. I've learned so much about myself, but really I learned a lot about everyone else, right? Like everyone else is like able to do these things and sort of has a different inner experience than I have. And it's made me a lot more curious and open-minded about things I don't understand that other people are doing.
Wow.
You're a joy, Sadie. You are simply a joy.
Oh, thank you.
So there's nothing lacking, is all I could say. By just couldn't be farther. You are simply, it's been a real pleasure to be with you.
Likewise, you guys. And yeah, thank you for having
Your story today reminds us there's no single right way to experience the world, which is where we were going. But it's just wonderful how you have been able to form your own experience of the world that's brought you such joy and such a great attitude. Whatever your limitations are, you have twice as many opportunities to experience life and to see things your way. And just thank you for being here. And for our listeners, again, Sadie's book, Do I Know You, is available and there will be links on our show notes, and be sure and grab a copy. Thank you, Sadie. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of It Happened to Me. We encourage you to learn more at ithappenedtomepod.com. Please use the contact form on our website to submit your guest suggestions, comments, questions, ideas, and feedback for the show. You can also email us directly at ithappenedtomepod@gmail.com. We would really appreciate it if you can leave us a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app like Apple or Spotify. This helps others in the rare disease and medical challenge community find us. It Happened to Me is created and hosted by Cathy Gillenhorn and Beth Glassman. I'm Keira Deneen from DNA Today, and I serve as our executive producer and marketing lead. Amanda Andrioli is our associate producer. Ashlyn Anokian is our graphic designer. And remember, it happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.